It's that time of year again when the smell of gingerbread and hot chocolate fill the air and beautifully bright lights wrap houses and trees. It's also that time of year when you bust out your coats, your scarves, and beanies and get nice and warm and cozy by the fire. It's also that time of year when you make your annual trip to Aunt Remus's house. And every year you walk in the door, she quickly criticizes your shoes, your pants, your weight, your hair, kids, your partner. It doesn't matter. Out comes the criticism. Nothing is ever good enough, right enough, smart enough, tall enough, short enough, anything enough. It doesn't matter with Aunt Remus because it never measures up. And simply put, Aunt Remus just isn't a nice person. But of course, you can't not go. We don't want to hurt her feelings, or anyone else's feelings for that matter. So in this video, I'm going to share with you 5 tips on how to deal with toxic and difficult family members during the holiday season. Hi, my name is Travis Goodman, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I make videos on holistic mental health. And my heart is to help equip you with the skills and tools necessary so you can live a more peaceful, balanced, fulfilled life. And in this video today, I'm going to go over 5 quick tips to help you deal with toxic and difficult family members this holiday season. And be sure to stay to the end because I have a special bonus just for you. So number 1, before you drive and get in the car and pack all the kids and clothes and everything in and drive to Aunt Remus's house, the first thing you need to do is have a game plan. So in that game plan, the first thing you need to do is you first need to prep. So if you're partnered, you need to talk with your partner about getting on the same page. What are your limits that you're going to have to draw the line on with Aunt Remus or any other family members for that matter? And if you're single, you still need to have a game plan with yourself. What are your limits? What are your boundaries? It's highly important that you know ahead of time so you're prepped for when something occurs. And the second part of the game plan is you need to know your exit plan. So for example, if you're driving to Aunt Remus's house and it's a 12-hour drive, and if you know that every single time that you stay with Aunt Remus, it's the same thing. So you can do one of 2 things. You can stay at Aunt Remus's house for free. Well, there's always a cost because it's free monetarily, but the cost is dealing with her 24/7. So it might be better for you actually to spend money on an Airbnb or hotel nearby so you can always leave the house when things get too tense or too difficult or toxic or awkward, so you can go to a place and have some peace and serenity. And number 3, knowing your limits, coming up with what are your limits. Knowing that is going to be helpful because when those limits are crossed, you know then to execute your exit plan or your we need to go plan. Number 2, attitude. We can already get ourselves anxious and bent out of shape before we even get to Aunt Remus's house. We could spend that whole 10-hour car drive bickering and complaining about how Aunt Remus every year does the same thing over and over and over again. So while that may be true, the problem with that is that's not actually helping you or your partner or your family get ready to deal with Aunt Remus. If anything, it's making things worse for you because guess who's stressed out in the entire drive? You are. She doesn't care. She has no idea. She's doing her Aunt Remus things in her house, getting prepped for the holiday. So the first thing you do with changing your attitude is to let go of what could happen. And the second part of that is to focus on the good possibilities, the positives of seeing Aunt Remus. And as you begin to focus on those positives and good things, that will begin to reduce your overall stress. So on your car drive there, instead of being stressed out the entire time, you're focusing on the good and you're able then to enjoy either your car ride alone if you're by yourself, with your partner, or with your family. And therefore, everybody's having that positive energy. So when you walk in the door, you're not already on edge. Number 3, and this is a big one, expectations. So do not expect all of a sudden for Aunt Remus to be a completely different person this year. See, often what happens is when we go to these family events, we often walk in with expectations of what we think our family members should be or act like. And the problem with that is we tend to set ourselves up for failure. We tend to set ourselves up to be frustrated, upset, and resentful. So do not expect her to be any different than she has been the past 30, 40, 50 years. She's probably going to be the same. Now, as a therapist, I understand that people can change, but I also understand not to expect people to change, but to learn to accept them for where they are. And by acceptance, I don't mean you like or approve of their behavior or actions, because that's important that we don't, but acceptance means to merely acknowledge reality as it currently is and not to fight it. However, if she's somehow different this year, that's awesome. That's great. In fact, that's a bonus. Number 4, for a lot of you, this is gonna be a hard one, but it's the fun C word of control. This is tough, I know. And with control, the very first step is learning to let go of control. Trying to control how Aunt Remus will act, how she will behave, what she will do, what she won't do, what she will say, and what she won't say. Let it go. And learn to accept that only you can control how you choose to respond or react to what Aunt Remus does or doesn't do. You only have the power to control yourself and nobody else. Not Aunt Remus, not your partner, not your kids, but yourself. But here's what you can do with control. You can set your limits, which goes back to number one, which again is knowing your limits and having that game plan. So this is why it's important to have that game plan in place, is to know your limits. So for example, if Aunt Remus starts to begin to criticize you like she does every single year, you can simply say, Aunt Remus, I do not appreciate you criticizing my shoes. And you can simply move on and let it go. Now, number five, if for example, Aunt Remus continues to cross your set of boundaries and limits, and let's say you continue to ask her and say, hey, Aunt Remus, I don't appreciate this type of talk. I don't appreciate you saying these things. Aunt Remus, I don't appreciate you yelling and screaming at me or criticizing my kids or me or my partner. And you start to set these limits and she continues to cross them. This is where I give you permission to use your exit plan. You can leave. You do not have to stay and continue to take her negative, toxic behavior. Psst, hey, come here. So if you find and realize that your family tends to, leave every year at your holiday gathering, you might be Aunt Remus. And if you are, it's actually okay. I don't judge you. In fact, I accept you. I want you to get better. So if you are Aunt Remus, it's okay. Have grace on yourself, love yourself, but look at yourself and examine and say, how am I part of the problem? What am I doing to perpetuate some maybe toxic, unhealthy patterns in my family? Because trust me, it's not too late to change. And the fact that you actually have the awareness, that's a good thing. So please talk to someone. You can get help. This is why we have boundaries. Boundaries are loving. Boundaries are essentially saying, I'm responsible for my behavior, my feelings, and my actions. Just like you are responsible for your feelings, behaviors, and actions. And so is Aunt Remus. When we don't set that boundary, when we don't say that, what we're doing is we're taking on the responsibility to control somebody else. And that just gets us resentful, exhausted, tired, upset, frustrated. See, setting boundaries means we're taking responsibility for our needs, our emotions. Now, it doesn't mean that we do not care about Aunt Remus. It doesn't mean that we go and fight fire with fire, but it simply means saying, no, this is not okay. This is not appropriate. And this may lead to one of two things when we set that limit. It may lead to a conversation with Aunt Remus. Maybe we've never had a direct dialogue or conversation to say, hey, Aunt Remus, when you do and say these things, it affects me and my family in this way. Maybe this family's never done that. But other times, maybe Aunt Remus is someone who isn't open for dialogue, or maybe you tried talking to her in the past. So again, that's when you implement that exit plan of saying, okay, we're gonna go now. We're gonna go to our Airbnb, which is again, why it's always good to plan ahead. Now see, a lot of us have difficulty setting those boundaries because we tend to fear. We tend to fear the loss of the relationship. We tend to fear feeling guilty that we've done something wrong or that we caused Aunt Remus to be upset. We tend to fear maybe that person's anger, or we tend to fear that we're gonna hurt their feelings by saying no. All of these things are all based, if you didn't hear already, on fear. And fear is what's gonna keep you continually doing the same thing every single year, going to Aunt Remus's house, having the same exact holiday get together every single time, where your boundaries are crossed, your limits are crossed, and you leave, end up feeling more empty, more frustrated, more resentful, more tired, more exhausted, and it feels like you just wasted an entire week. And as a PSA, if you set a boundary and Aunt Remus gets upset, pissed off, and has a tantrum, guess who's responsible for said feelings? She is. Let them be her feelings, and it's not your responsibility to fix or resolve them. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. Comment below what has been something most enlightening to you as I've been sharing about these 5 tips of taking care and coping with toxic and difficult family. And my bonus, I want you to click on this next video, because in this next video, I'm gonna show you a deep breathing technique that you can use on your way to Aunt Remus's house or while you're there, especially if you need to kind of calm down and take a pause. And until next time, you have a wonderful and happy holiday season.